When you talk about the mental health problems, when people come back from war and combat and they see things that maybe a lot of the folks in this room have seen many times over, and you're strong and you can handle it, but a lot of people can't handle it.
Now, Donald Trump took a lot of flack from veterans and veteran groups after he said that comment right before Election Day. Well, a local woman named Stephanie Keegan, she led the charge. In fact, she was featured on the cover of the Daily News after she criticized Trump. Her son Daniel, a decorated veteran who did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and he struggled with both PTSD and opioid abuse after he returned. Daniel, he died from a heroin overdose in 2016. He was only 28. Since his passing, Daniel's mother, Stephanie, she's worked tirelessly to help veterans from both opioid abuse and PTSD. And I recently sat down with her, and she spoke about her late son and her mission. Stephanie, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I often try when we talk about this subject, and there's more than one subject here, but as best I can put a human face on it. So if you could, talk to the audience about the Daniel that you raised, and the Daniel who served this country with distinction here, including 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Well, Daniel was a wonderful young man, always working on community efforts, always thinking about how he could help the people next to him, in front of him, who were struggling. He was very, very bright. He had an 800 on the verbal on the SATs and a 760 on the math. He served for 8 years in the 82nd Airborne as intelligence analyst for the 7th Special Forces Group, and deployed twice to Kandahar, Afghanistan, which is a very, very volatile place in the world. Really wanted to be in the Army his whole entire life. Chose not to go to West Point because he graduated from high school in 2005. And the world was not a particularly peaceful place, and his parents weren't really keen on the military. So he tried. He went to college for a year somewhere else, and then came home the following summer and said, I have to join the Army. So he worked as a roofer for the summer so that he would get really strong and healthy for basic training, and went off into the Army in September of 2006.
In fact, at one point he was recognized as Soldier of the Year, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. In 2009, he was the 82nd Airborne 7th Special Forces Group Soldier of the Year.
And from everything I understand, extremely proud of his military service. But yes, the son that you sent to Afghanistan, he came back different.
Oh, he was never the same after the second deployment. He was in Kandahar during the Battle of Marja. And as an intelligence analyst, he took a lot of the responsibility for the things that didn't happen well on his own shoulders. And as a result, came home with a just raging case of PTSD. It was like the lights had gone out. My bright, sparkling young son was no longer really there. He was still bright, but there was no sparkle. And he had a hard time forgiving himself for what he considered his responsibility in the things that didn't go the way he thought they should have.
Sadly, his story, hardly unique, but people may have heard of you the first time when the President Trump made remarks regarding people with PTSD, calling them, among other things, as mentally weak.
Right.
You took obvious issue to that.
Oh, yes. I really feel like I've been a teacher in one form or another my whole entire life. I believe there is a great deal of power in knowledge, and I believe that if you don't know what you're speaking about, you should leave that conversation up to the people who are the experts in the field, or who at least have had some experience in it. I don't think he was ill-intentioned, but I thought it was irresponsible for a person who is in a position of such influence to say something as if he knew it to be fact, when in fact the bravest, strongest person I have ever met was my son, who was battling PTSD. And I've never seen anybody work harder to be better than he did while he was ill.
Another issue we have covered far too long here, and I've spoken to everybody from the people on the front lines, from law enforcement to treatment facilities, to addicts, both recovering, families who are grieving from lost loved ones, to people of the cloth who have buried too many people at too young an age, regardless, throughout our entire region and country. And that is opioid abuse.
Yes.
And you lost your son to an overdose, and from what I understand, fentanyl too. It not only, obviously, the loss, but do I have this right, that 7 other members from the same unit in the same, they also?
7 other veterans died that weekend from opioid overdoses. So Daniel was kind of lumped into a group that was now an investigation, which meant we didn't get him home to have his funeral for quite some time. But unfortunately, they weren't able to track down where he was getting his drugs from. And he had made it really clear to me very early on in the conversation after he left the service that he was able to use his credit card and order online and have it FedEx to his front door. So here I am thinking, this is a kid who hates leaving his house, so at least he won't go out to buy drugs. But no, he could have them delivered to his front door with a credit card using his computer.
And to me, I thought I'd cover every angle of this. I frankly learned about this through you, and I know that you're on an advisory board with Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney,
Yes.
who's been a frequent guest in this program. This is not some random one-off.
Right.
If I understand this, $800 million worth of drug purchases related to opioids are done, and you can do it with a credit card?
With a credit card, online. You never have to leave your house. You never see the person who you're buying from. They never see you. And every so often, I guess the resources move to another, website or whatever, so that they are hard to track down. But he didn't have to leave his house. When you mention Congressman Maloney, he's got this bill, this Stop Online Opioid Sales Act, which I think is a brilliant way to, as a teaching personality, to find out where the drugs are coming from. Find out as much as you can about where they're being purchased and how they're being purchased, gathering that information and using it to put a stop to it as quickly as you can. The legislation will also require that information be produced annually so that they can update and see how effective the work that has been done based on the results they're getting is.
Well, I think you've done yeoman's work in at least putting a human face on this. And again, I encourage people to reach out with both questions and shared stories. And I know Stephanie would like to engage with you, and thank you for doing so with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely.
And coming up next, a bombshell coming out of the NCAA, more specifically, the FBI. The FBI apparently has uncovered revelations about some of the biggest men's basketball programs with the most storied programs, as well as also legendary coaches. It could have a seismic shift on college sports. I'll bring in Justin after the break to talk about where we go from here.